Hi.
Hi.
So we're here at the Mood Disorder Support and Education Group, and I'm going to ask everybody else if you wouldn't mind muting, quieting yourself, not muting, so that we can go ahead and have our recording. Let's see if I can do that. This is a monthly support group. We've been around for over a decade. We were at Duke for a while, and then we branched off, and then we were quiet, and then COVID hit, and now we're online. And it turns out it's kind of helpful because people can come and join even if they might have stuff going on at home or transportation issues. This has been an interesting bridge to accessibility that we didn't count on. And we have some international people that join us, so that's pretty cool. This is an unusual situation. Normally everybody is zooming in, but it turns out that my colleague was here in the office and we thought it'd be fun to be together. We both are vaccinated and we both have recently been tested, so we feel pretty safe with each other. And I just want to launch into it, but normally what we do in just listing the scope of what this group is, we often have a discussion and then we kind of share stories, which has been one of the strengths of having a support group. We try not to ask, questions that are breaking confidentiality or that are kind of advice giving. We try to honor everyone's opinion, basing this group on the National Alliance of Mental Illness model, which is everybody comes to where they are because they've been on a journey. So everybody's perspective is valid. I started doing these groups because I had so many questions to ask the experts in the field. And when I was at Duke, I would have these hallway consultations and I began to think, gosh, there's just such great information. It'd be so nice if I could share it with, my clients, the clients that were in the clinic, my colleagues. So that's really how we got started, is just being able to pull folks in. So our person today, I didn't really memorize your bio. I just think you're so awesome that I see it on the wall, from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, master's in social work, level 4 standard. This is triple P. This is a very seasoned, and I'm fawning on you. Diane, will you say just a little bit about yourself so I can stop babbling? Sure. Why you're interested in this work? How did you come to be?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to look. Am I looking at you? I'm looking at the screen.
We're looking at some of our people here and each other.
So I'm Diane Paces-Wiles, and I am a clinical social worker practicing in Durham. I work with children, adolescents, and adults, and also do quite a bit of parenting work. And so, Cindy invited me to talk about working with teenagers, which is a population that is really interesting to me professionally as well as personally, as I'm a parent of two 16-year-olds. And so what I can say from both the sort of clinical side and the parental side is that it's hard, right? It also can be rewarding and it can be positive, but it's still hard. And it's not only hard for parents. I like to, and Cindy and I were talking about this just before we started, I like to remind myself and my fellow parents that it's hard to be a teen. There's an enormous amount of pressure. Developmentally, the number of changes and things that are happening, it's just really intense. And I think a lot of times, when we're dealing with behaviors that feel difficult, it's hard to kind of get in touch with our compassion about the fact that these are some challenging years to live through. So that's something that I often talk with parents about, is kind of getting back in touch with their compassion for their child and compassion for themselves as well.
Mhm. Billboard that says that. Just hold the compassion.
Yeah. So where would you like me to start?
Well, I think some of our discussion really launched from the distinction of when it feels like a young person is being disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
That really was a bit of a conversation that kind of got me going in this whole topic.
Right. So yeah, what I had shared with Cindy is that oftentimes when families come to me with concerns about their teen, they say that they're dealing with a lot of disrespect. So my teen doesn't respect me, they're disrespectful to me. And in talking with families, what I often find is that the parents are using sort of the concept of respect as synonymous with compliance or with obedience.
Yeah.
So, and that's an old framework, and a lot of us were raised in that framework. So they make a request or they say something to their teen and they get a lot of resistance, they get pushback. And that can feel very, very threatening to a parent in terms of their authority. It can be anxiety provoking for parents when they feel like their teens aren't listening to them. So what I think is important is thinking about what's happening developmentally. So during the teen years, socially and emotionally, there's a lot of exploration, identity formation, learning how to be in relationship with different kinds of people, figuring out what your future is going to look like, and really figuring out what it is you care about, what's important to you, what you like, what you don't like. So it's this period of time where there's just a lot of exploration and questioning. So really the pushback is developmentally appropriate. I think what often gets in the way is that the manner in which the pushback is given by teens is sometimes really hard to take. So neurologically, what's happening in the teenage years is that the limbic system, which is the emotional center, is quite well developed, while the prefrontal cortex, where we have our higher level thinking, organization, self-control, all of planning, all of that kind of stuff, that doesn't come fully online until your mid-20s. So we have this uneven development where your teenager is really operating much more out of their emotional brain. And so what happens is we will get what feels like an outsized emotional response to a request. So, can you take the garbage out, right, is all of a sudden, elicits a lot of anger, frustration, and so forth. So, I think coming into this question of, does my child respect me? Those are two things that really tend to get in the way for parents. What I see is parents are often then reacting to their child's reaction.
Yeah.
Right. So I have, teenager has a big emotional reaction. Then that triggers parents' big emotional reaction. And before you know it, we've lost the purpose of the conversation and we have just escalated into conflict.
Yeah.
Right. And then, the parents like, all I asked you to do was empty the dishwasher, right? And everybody's, the whole house is in an uproar. So I talk to parents a lot about in those moments when you're feeling that sort of, the impact of the limbic brain from your teenager, ask yourself, do some self-talk and say, am I reacting to their reaction? They're having an emotional reaction. Or am I responding to their need? What is underneath this emotional reaction? And how can we try to communicate with the teenager, underneath that emotion? So that's something that, when we talk about parents feeling disrespected, I think comes up a lot. And it's really often, I think, a misinterpretation of, this very emotional response.
I love that you laid it out like that, right? So at least in terms of an overall concept. And then, so you might say that to a teenager, you might say that to a parent in session, maybe separately or together. And then the practical part. Then how do you get them to actually de-escalate or at least orient to what's going on? How does that actually play out?
Yeah. So, again, I think if the parent can sort of resist, again, reacting to the reaction, there are a couple of ways to manage that. Sometimes if it's a mild reaction, right? Like eye rolling or, kind of a sarcastic tone, I just coach parents to ignore that. Getting in at that level is it's going to go nowhere good. That's my personal kind of approach. If it's getting to the point where you really feel that it's inappropriate, then I think what the parent can do is redirect and say, listen, I want to talk with you about this, but let's do it when both of us are calm. And I'm going to take a break, right? So you're not engaging at that really emotional level, and you are modeling, how to kind of use that frontal lobe and bring a little bit of control back into the situation. So those are kind of two approaches.
So would you maybe role play that with them?
I might,
Or
I might have them talk about a recent, a conflict that happened and maybe sort of dissect it a little bit. So, at what point, right, could either of us have made a different decision that would have resulted in something else? I'll often ask the teenager, right then, what would you have liked your parent to say?
Nice.
Right. And allowing them, again, that sort of getting past the reaction, right? And to like the heart of the matter. So a lot of times when we're talking about parents checking up on kids about, did you do your homework, or did you, empty the dishwasher or whatever? What gets triggered in children is, teenagers in particular, is this feeling of my parents don't trust me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the other piece of this kind of respect question that I think gets overlooked a lot, is that, parents sort of expect respect, but we don't always see it as an exchange, right? But respect in its truest sense should be mutual, right? Should be this exchange of respect, right? And teenagers, as people, deserve respect as well. So then the question is, what is it like? What does that look like, right? What does it look like for a parent to respect a teenager? So I kind of come back to the main things that I hear when teenagers are having a difficult time communicating with their parents. What I hear is they don't listen to me, they don't trust me, and they don't like me or accept me, right? Sometimes it's they don't like my friends, they don't like, but it's something in that sort of acceptance category. And I think this is really important because these are the things that our teenagers need from us most during this developmental stage, right? So my parents don't listen to me, right? They need to be able to express these complicated feelings, ideas, questions that they have, and to feel like they have a receptive audience. I think so often as parents, we're busy, we're tired, right? It's so we're thinking like, what am I going to answer? Like 2 steps ahead, right? So, can I, can I stay out late Saturday? No, right? Without really even hearing, like, what does this mean to the child? What importance does it have? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be with? Right? Getting more information in a relational way, rather than just sort of, having sort of a policy, right? And the more we can do that, the more likely we are to be let in to some of the, the deeper, more important things that the teenager is dealing with. So that's listening, right? I also talk to families about, when was the last time you had like a real conversation with your teen, about their day, about their friends, about things that they were really interested in. I think a lot of our parent-teenage conversations get distilled down to, what kids feel like is nagging, right? But like, did you do this? Did you finish this? What grade did you get on the test? Right? It's a lot of sort of checking up on, and that's right. That's not relational, right? That's very sort of task oriented. And so, one of the reasons I think that, teenagers can benefit from therapy is that they actually have that adult who is deeply interested in who they are as a person. And that is not available to teenagers very much. Yeah.
That's such a lovely way of phrasing it. It's so humane and compassionate. Because I forget about that stuff. Right?
Yeah. I mean, we all want to be heard.
Yeah.
And again, it's such a chaotic time with so much change and so many questions. They really benefit from being able to process what they're going through in a way that feels safe and not judgmental. That doesn't mean that as parents we're going to give them free rein, right? We're not going to say yes to every request, but we're going to hear it, right? We're going to say, like, help me understand, like, what this means to you.
One of the other aspects, why would people come into therapy often is because there's something that's more clinical, that might be diagnosable in sort of our general theme with this mood disorder support group, which is, either a depression or an anxiety or ADHD, right? And or a sleep disturbance or something like that. So, not covering every single possible diagnosis, but it sounds like it's already difficult because of some of the developmental stage. But then if a teen has any kind of mood disorder, or if the parent has any kind of mood disorder, what way that, might interfere. Just some thoughts about that.
No, absolutely. And, the reason that I like to start with all families, regardless of, kind of what once we, assure that safety's in place and so forth, I like to start with communication, because no matter what the diagnosis, we know that teenagers do better when they have family support, right? It's a protective factor. So this is not to indicate that if your child has a mood disorder, it's because you don't have a good relationship, but to say that if your child has a mood disorder and you have a good relationship, you're going to be able to understand more deeply what's going on with your child, access support for them, and potentially sort of mitigate the severity of the symptoms. And so, again, regardless of, what the presenting problem is, I really want to work with families on their child feeling like they have really good support. And a lot of times what I hear from kids is, well, I don't talk to my parents. I don't tell them that. And then it comes back to, them feeling like their parents don't listen to them, right? Why should I tell them? Because they don't listen, right?
Right.
And so, engaging parents in more of that true listening, that like that relational communication. Sometimes I'll have parents, just kind of do a little tally of, okay, we don't see our kids that much, right? We're, it's after work, after school until, usually in my house, parents go to bed. And so during that window of time, what was the nature of your conversation? A lot of times people will come back and will have realized, like, I told him to hang up his backpack. I reminded him to do his science homework. I asked him why he didn't take out the garbage, right? It's none of it or little of it is really communicating to the kid, like, I'm interested in you, right? You matter to me. I want to know what's going on with you. I want to know what you care about. When we can get that piece back in, even if there is, mood disorder, anxiety, ADHD, what have you, there's just a lot more we can do. There's a lot more coping strategies that we can employ, and just a lot more support that we can give to the teenagers and the family as a whole.
I just love this. I'm so glad that you came. Like, the language is
Thanks,
so
Cindy.
useful. I mean, I'm going to go a little bit outside the box, which is to say, part of my interest in this is that thing that you describe where the frontal cortex shuts down. That doesn't just happen in teenagers. So understanding some of these communication breakdowns, that can apply to all people. So
Absolutely.
I mean, that's another topic, especially we might have somebody who might come talk with us about trauma, somebody I know. But it's a relevant approach because teenagers or not, we all have these moments. I want to circle back to a question that was asked earlier. So let's say a family comes in and they're just actually doing some maintenance or proactive work, like, hey, we do want to work on some communication. Maybe there's a little reason, school issue or something that's bringing us, but really we're mostly good. We mostly love each other. It's mostly fine, but we just want to do, some work and get our skills up. And if there's an issue, right, with the teen, with the young person, how do you deal with some of the confidentiality? Right? How do you help them and the parents know about, your role as the therapist? I mean, I know there's different roles that are involved, but how do you explain that to the family as they come in, and especially if you're worried about something that the young person might be doing?
Yeah, so this is a little sticky, right? So we have, so if I'm working individually with the adolescent, it's not family work per se. Of course, we have kind of a clear directive on certain things. If you're going to hurt yourself, if you're going to, if someone else is hurting you, or if you're thinking about hurting someone else, right? Those are all times where, we may break confidentiality. What I talk with my teenage clients about is that I will always talk to them before, let's say, pulling a parent in. And so, let's say there's something, let's say there's self-harm going on. Let's say there's cutting going on. That's something that, right, is a little bit in a gray area, right? It's not lethal, but it's certainly something that we want to, to extinguish as a behavior. That's not something that I'll automatically break confidentiality around, right? What I will do is work with the teenager and sometimes with the parents on their communication to see if we can get more comfort with than the teenager telling the parent, or me facilitating the teenager telling the parent. So, I'll have, a family meeting, and I'll say, there's something Cindy and I have been talking about, and we feel like it's important for you to know. And here are the things that that are going on, and here is what Cindy needs, right? So it's sort of a yeah, yeah. And so interestingly, I have really rarely had a teenager tell me no, they don't want to pull the parent in. So if I give them the opportunity to say, listen, you've told me, right, you're worried about how much you're drinking. This feels like something that, that your mom or dad should be aware of. What do you think? They'll usually say, yeah, if you help me with this conversation, we can talk to them about it. And that's, that's the bottom line. And I think that the truth that often, we forget is that our kids actually do want our help and they want our acceptance, and they want to feel, loved and nurtured. They would much rather get that from like their parent than from me, right? So I'm coming in and saying, like, I'm hearing what's going on with you. I'm going to be sort of a non-judgmental space to help you process that. And now I really think we can get you more support. How about we bring your parents into this? But we have to do that right in a way where the teenager already feels safe and respected, and there's enough containment so the parent is not going to like flip out.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That is great. Mm-hmm. That is great.
What I will say in addition is, it's not always instantaneous. So it's not like the child's like, yeah, I've been self-harming, and then they're ready to tell the parent, right? Sometimes we're doing work, and I kind of operate under sort of more of a mitigation model. So like, how can we reduce the risk? How can we decrease the frequency, and start doing that, working on sort of safety plans, coping strategies. And so yeah, I hope that's
that is very rich. And I think even the way that you phrased it, it lends to it being safe, right? That heavy things can be discussed, and that's not an automatic report to the parents, that there's a container and a skill bridge that you do, which is like, that's good to know. In some of your work, is there like a pointer that you would say, like a little phrase to parents to keep, or to the young person to keep, so that's kind of a comeback to like mindfulness, like something that would be a mission statement or something to help them stay on track?
I mean, the phrase I use most frequently with families is about, are you reacting to their reaction, or are you responding to their need, right? Because that's where I see things fall apart in parent-teen communication so often is, the teen has an emotional response, the parent has an emotional response, and then everything's just exploding. And so, as the adults, right, with the more developed prefrontal cortex, we need to take the lead on sort of containing our own emotions and, helping to respond to the teenager in a way that, is more functional. Because it's not functional when people are just screaming at each other.
And then I'd like to come at this one extra piece is, all of this has been going on this is a challenge anyway. And then we had this event that occurred that has rocked our world. And the little bit of experience that I've been having with families is that it really is distressing to young people. All of it, school,
Yeah.
the situations of being at home,
Yeah.
Their peers, all of it. And I wanted to get your take on this other challenge of the pandemic to teenagers in particular.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been really devastating for a lot of teenagers. I really do. It has been such an interruption, right? To what, again, what's the developmental function of these years,
Yeah.
right? They're supposed to be connecting with peers, figuring out, who they are, individuating from their families, exploring new interests. And, so much of that has just been completely shut down. I have seen, and the way that I sort of work with it is that a lot of these kids are sort of grieving what they've lost. And so, you have a situation in which, things that are milestones, right, that people were counting on, learning to drive, going to the prom, having, a sweet 16 party, whatever that is in the mind of the teenager where they envisioned themselves being, it didn't happen. And I have a lot of kids I work with who are just feeling like this lost time. And so, I just kind of really make a lot of space for that. And that's, again, where the compassion comes in. Again, from a parent perspective, you may be feeling a lot of, anger and emotional intensity, but underneath that, your child may be really experiencing a sense of loss and in some cases, almost panic. So, in my household, my kids started a brand new high school from their bedrooms, right? And so, we all feel like it's just this enormous trying to catch up. So the first time in the school is their second year of school. And, I think that has been really, really difficult, really difficult. So.
Any other peanut gallery question?
No, I was just thinking because for kids, for teens, they can only look forward. We as adults can reflect back and go, well, sure, there's only this, and then there's this, and then there's this. But they're only looking at the future, and they don't have anything past that, which is part of the reason why it is so big. It's where it's the only place they're going, it's all they can see.
Could you guys hear that? So our other colleague was talking about with teenagers, because they don't have a fully developed frontal cortex, they can't really look into the future. They really don't have that ability to think about past and future. So it feels quite devastating. Say it in your words better.
Yeah, and also they don't have the experience of it. So
They
they
don't have
have
the
no other
experience.
life.
This
So
is all they
everything-
know. This is it. It's pretty important.
And so much
This is
of
the only cake.
right. And so much of our culture is about high school and sweet 16 and driving, and these are all maturity milestones.
Yeah.
And they can't see beyond that because they don't know what's beyond it because they haven't experienced it yet. And so it's taking away that milestone and that marker that also helps them know that I am maturing.
Right. Could you guys hear that part? A little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's another piece of it. I think, orienting to why it might be particularly difficult for a young person relative to everybody else, right? There's a lot of stress overall, but for a young person, they're missing some perspective to make sense of it. So, it's like, okay, keeping that in mind. Well, is there any like last tidbits that you want to throw at us? 'Cause there's so
Any last tidbits? I mean, I think, for parents, I would encourage an openness to the idea that the teenage years can actually be rewarding, and that your relationship with your children can evolve and deepen. It again, like I make no promises that it's going to be easy. Like that's off the table, but it can really be rewarding. And parenting is a long haul proposition, and so we're really wanting to look across the sort of trajectory of our relationship with these people, right? These emerging people, they're coming into who they're going to be as adults, and that really is kind of an amazing opportunity to connect with them during that time. So I would love people to be more in touch with the positive aspects of it.
we don't hear that. We don't really ever hear that kind of message. I'm so glad I asked. So my colleague, Diane Paces-Wiles, will leave contact in the comments. This group meets monthly. We try to leave a calendar, and I want to say thank you all, and sign off and see you next month, hopefully. Okay, let me stop this recording.